the field office in New Orleans for the FBI is going to be Special Agent Ann Long, and that's spelled A-N as the first name, and his last name is L-U-O-N-G. And if you have any questions regarding that active investigation, you're going to need to contact the FBI. Okay? Okay.
Sir. Thanks, sir.
So Drew, what first brought your attention to these folks?
What first brought to attention was a report of a possible intoxicated driver swerving on the interstate is what first brought us into it.
And can you then walk us through what happened?
Basically, I just observed several lane violations and it conducted a traffic stop on the vehicle, approximately mile marker 206 westbound, basically in between Eloy and Picacho area.
There were kids in the car. What were they doing?
The two kids were seated in the back of the vehicle. Both boys were.
Were they scared? Were they, I mean, what were they like?
Initial contact, the boys were just very quiet, and that was all they were doing, just very quiet.
When did you first realize that this was more than maybe just a traffic stop or an impaired driver?
I think when, speaking to Mr. Rogers, him providing false information is definitely the first thing that would have keyed me into it.
Were you alone? Did you call for backup?
For about the first 5 minutes I was, and then backup showed up.
Is that routine, or is that something that you called for because you did somebody hear you clear out, and that's why they just came by, or did you call for?
No, actually, the other trooper, Trooper Brishke, actually just stopped out with me. When you're looking for attempt to locate vehicles, you commonly just stop out with another trooper. It's a big area out there. We patrol highways, and sometimes backup could be 20, 30 minutes out. So it's always nice if somebody's in the area, they just stop out with you.
Did you see it's about $8,000?
The money, I can't comment on that.
Can you kind of walk us through how this whole thing went down? I mean, kind of step by step, how you realized what was going on, when you found out they were wanted, etc.
Well, during the course of the traffic stop, like I said, the first thing that brought us in was that Mr. Rogers provided a false name and false information. In the state of Arizona, you can't be detained because of that, and to find out the true identity, he was detained and placed in the rear seat of my patrol car. During the course of the traffic stop, several identifiable criminal indicators were observed, which led us to believe that possible criminal activity was afoot. Unknown what it was at the time, but we were able to, over the course of about 2 hours on the side of the road, use resources from our dispatch and from our Criminal Investigations Bureau to identify actually who he was and the warrants, the amount of warrants that were out on these subjects, and we were able to take everybody into custody successfully.
Those indicators that you mentioned?
No, ma'am. They're just, it's a broad thing. It's through my training, it's things that we recognize to know that you never know what it is. We're out there, criminals travel from point A to point B. They're on our highways, they're on our interstates, they're on our state routes. It's up to us to identify and to see what's going on, what actually is happening.
When did you realize she was wanted as well? I mean, she didn't give false information, did she?
No, ma'am, she did not. It actually, once we had identified the children, was when that popped up.
They were turned over to DCS?
Yes, ma'am. And when we did eventually place everybody under arrest, it was out of sight of the children. The children were taken. We bought Happy Meals for them. We took them to the office. They colored. They watched cartoons. I mean, they were in a good state. I mean, we took very good care of them. They were very happy.
Had you even heard anything about missing kids out of Louisiana before this stop?
No, ma'am.
Do you have any idea what they were doing here?
I can't get into the details of it. I believe they were passing through.
Resisted arrest or anything?
What's that, sir?
Did they resist arrest?
They did not. As far as the only resistance was the false name.
When you realized, I mean, these people are accused of some pretty heinous stuff. When you realized who you were dealing with here, what was kind of going through your head?
Well, I think once you figure out exactly what was going on and the totality of the circumstances, it makes you think. You know, that's why our troopers are out there on the road every day, and we have to have the utmost officer safety out on the road at all time. I mean, it's courteous vigilance at all time, but we try to strive to make sure we go home at the end of the night as well. We have families just like everybody else, and I think to have something of that magnitude, it really opens your eyes and makes you think, you know, and learn from what you could do better or what you did right.
Weapons in the car?
I can't comment on that, ma'am.
How long have you been on the department?
I've currently been with the Department of Public Safety since June of last year. Prior to that, I worked for the Pinal County Sheriff's Office, where I spent the last 4 years in the Canine and Criminal Interdiction Drug Unit.
Have you ever arrested anybody like these types of people? I mean, a level, a magnitude so high, you know, it's international, interstate fugitives.
I've been involved in a couple cases with homicide suspects out of Phoenix, where they had fled the city and we'd chased them. But it's something of this magnitude, especially with the children. This is probably the biggest that I've had.
Trooper Shuey, could you talk a little bit about the Interdiction for Protection of Children, your training, when that was, and how it helped you during this traffic stop?
Yes, sir. We went through the Interdiction and Protection of Children in the academy, and what we strive to do is there's a lot of sex trafficking, child trafficking throughout our state, whether it be coming from Mexico, through our state, through the country. We've been trained on how to try to identify these and intercept the people who are involved in them. We wanted to be clear that if you're going to travel through Arizona and be conducting that kind of criminal activity, our troopers out on the road are aware of that, and we are trained to interdict it and to successfully apprehend these people.
Can you talk about general criminal indicators?
General criminal indicators when you're talking to people, I mean, you know, if people have inconsistent stories, they appear very nervous, shaking, pacing in circles. These are things that people cannot control. It's a subconscious activity. You can tell yourself all day long that you want to tell me a lie, but you cannot physically control your body.
And you can't comment on whether they were acting that way in this situation?
No, ma'am.
But the reality is that there was nothing suspicious until he gave you a false information. Is that accurate?
I can't comment on that, ma'am.
Just so we're clear on, there have been questions about indicators and evidence. We are not going to comment on the FBI's case. I can say generally that there was evidence found that was all turned over to the FBI. You need to contact them for what that evidence was and their active criminal investigation. As for the specific indicators, that leads into the active criminal investigation. So we're not going to get into the specific criminal indicators that our troopers saw. They were there, they were notated and given to the FBI as well as the courts. So, but we cannot get into those specific indicators in this case. We can talk about generally what we see in criminal cases, the types of indicators that we see, which if you want to ask those type of questions, that's fine, but nothing specific to this case, please.
Well, I was just talking about you were talking about child interdictions.
Yes.
And he basically said earlier that the kids were fine. So it wasn't that, his initial indication that something was awry was that this guy giving him false information.
Yeah.
That's pretty accurate.
The children were fine once in our custody. They were taken very well care of. So we took care of them, got them food, kept them busy.
Right, but when you first came on them, the kids didn't give you any indication that they were in trouble or they were scared or they wanted to be away from these people.
Again, yeah, I can't comment on that one. I can't give you the details, sorry, ma'am.
But generally speaking, are you going to get indicators when you're talking about the exploitation or the trafficking of children and humans? Are you going to get criminal indicators from the victims themselves?
Yes, I am.
You say these sorts of things you learn from them. Can you talk about what you've learned from this specific traffic stop?
Let me say that we have several press releases out, and you can answer that, but several press releases out since the Interdiction and Protection of Children has rolled out at DPS, and many indicators are listed there on what to look for the adult handlers, if you will, the adults that are with them, the conditions of how they're dressed, items in the vehicle that may not match. There's a long list there on the press releases. Go ahead.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. So you said earlier that in certain situations like this, traffic stop like this, you learned something that you want to take forward to future traffic stops. What did you learn in this situation that you want to apply the next time you pull someone over?
I think the biggest thing for me was you look at this and it could be like any other traffic stop. You could pull a family of 4 over and never know that something was going on. I think the biggest thing for me, in being that this is the first child abduction case that I have worked, is to really focus on it earlier next time. I was so focused on the driver that maybe we focused on the children later, but maybe bring them into the traffic stop a little bit earlier, and we could have detained both subjects a little bit quicker. That would be my learning point.
So it's fair to say that his behavior kind of tipped you off to maybe think that there's something more to this guy than just maybe being intoxicated or whatever?
Oh, when you're trying to lie to the police and give them a false name, I mean, that's automatically going to tip you off. Why? Why do you not want to know who you are? Typically, a normal person, you ask them what their name is, and everything's truthful. So that was the biggest thing.
Forgive me if you already said, was he in fact intoxicated?
I can't comment on that. That leads to an investigation, but you could find it out at a later date. But right now, I can't comment on it.
Are the children in state's custody, or are they with relatives? Do you know?
It's
Right now, as far as we know, they're still with Department of Child Safety.
yeah, and the DCS, they responded right away. I mean, they had a great service. Everybody in general, the dispatchers worked awesome. I mean, they were calling police departments across the country trying to find a record of this guy because we couldn't find anything. We had detectives did an outstanding job on the investigation, and they really brought it home on it. I mean, we were able to secure the arrest and get his identification because of that.
Are they still in the state, or they have already been transported to Louisiana?
I believe the last I had heard, I had spoke to Louisiana State Patrol yesterday. They had actually missed a 4th warrant on the subject for additional bank robbery, and that warrant was for $1 million. So that warrant has been faxed over to the Pinal County Jail and was added to his charges
So he's still in the state?
with no bond. Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
assuming the kids gave you their real names. Did you get a hit on them?
Yes, ma'am. We did.
This traffic stop was on I-10.
Yes, sir.
Was it just one caller that called in for a drunk driver, or was it multiple callers? Do you know?
Just one.
Just one single phone call from the driver?
And that's all it takes, you know. If you're going to commit criminal activity, there's eyes everywhere. You know, whether you commit the crime in Louisiana or you commit the crime here. We work very well with law enforcement agencies around the country, and it just shows that teamwork, doesn't matter how far apart we are, we can still work together.
You good? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for pursuing.
Thank you.
I apologize because I was late. If I could just ask you a few questions, I'm sure that everybody else already knows
Okay.
Absolutely.
or already got. So can you take me from the beginning, from receiving the phone call and I guess your experience?
We'd received notification, possible intoxicated driver or reckless driver. I had located the vehicle on Interstate 10, observed several lane violations, and had conducted the traffic stop at approximately mile marker 206 westbound Interstate 10.
So approaching the car, speaking with the driver, can you walk me through that?
I can't give you the details as far as what we talked about. I can tell you that at one point he was asked to step back to my vehicle so I can get his information due to not having a license. During that time, he provided me a false name. We conducted numerous checks across the country, and were unable to locate any record for the name he provided.
And I don't know if you can answer, what was the state of the children with you, throughout the process?
The children were just very quiet. They were very quiet. I mean, they were in the back seat, and you wouldn't have known they were there if I didn't see them.
other detail that you think that I might have missed that would be important?
No, ma'am. The outcome was successful. I mean, the children, I think the biggest point is the children, once in our custody, were very well taken care of. DCS responded, and I mean, it was a group effort. It was overall investigation completed by everybody, and it came out very well in the end.
Did you stay with the children? Did somebody else stay with the children?
We had the children in the office with us. We kept them busy. I mean, coloring, watching cartoons, got them food, and they were in a good place.
Did they seem to be aware of the situation or what was going on?
As far as the 2-year-old, I mean, I really couldn't speak for it. The 7-year-old, I don't think he knew what was going on. We had kept everything out of sight, out of mind of the children during our contact with the 2 subjects. So I don't think they really knew what was going on. And so we tried to keep them occupied and happy, and they had a good time, you know.
Were they both intoxicated or just the driver?
I can't comment on that.
I think I have everything. Thank you so much.
You want to stay there? I'm going to ask you a couple more questions.
Yes,
that I
ma'am.
asked already. I'm just getting a tighter shot of you.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
What I asked you before was, you end up finding out that these people are accused of some pretty heinous things. You know, when you found out that these are the people who you caught, what was going through your head?
I think it's just a gut check. It shows you what you actually deal with out there. You know, you go throughout your daily stops and you may contact 20 people a day, and maybe out of those 20, 19 are good, outstanding citizens. So it actually shows you, you know, what is out there on the road. And like I was explaining earlier, we're always on our toes. You know, we never let down our guard. You approach everything with caution, and this shows you rightly so. You know, we need to be careful. There are violent felons out there.
Have you ever dealt with anything like this before?
Not to this magnitude, but like I stated earlier, I have been involved in several high-profile cases and chases, but this was probably my biggest.
You go home at night after something like this, I mean, you kind of said before, it makes you realize what you're, you know, really what you're doing out there and what, you know, the consequences could be. Is that what you were thinking about when you went home that night?
I think for me to go home at the end of that night, I was grateful that we could locate the children. You know, like I said before, all of us are family men, family women. We all have families. We're brothers, sisters, fathers, uncles. And for us, if that was my kids, I would want the same kind of commitment from law enforcement that they receive. So to me, it makes me appreciate my job and for doing a good job.
Moving forward, next time you pull someone over, you know, how are things going to change, or are they going to change for you?
I conduct my business, my stops the same way every time. I've done it for years. But like I said, the thing that you can always learn from what you do. And if you're not learning, you're not progressing and making yourself better. So I think for me, like I said, the next time is definitely going to key into the children a little bit earlier.
And one more time, talk to me about, you got one call, someone saying this person may be drunk, and that ended up leading to what this is today. Talk to me about the importance of, if you see something, say something.
It's huge, you know, especially with all the other issues that are going on in our nation today. If you see something and you think that something's going on, that criminal activity is happening, or possibly somebody's in trouble, you see somebody driving down the street and you see a children saying help through the back window, or maybe making a gesture, you know, you never know what it could be. And it takes something as simple as a phone call to notify law enforcement and for us to look into it, to investigate it. And like you see here, it takes one phone call to locate 2 outstanding felons and 2 abducted children.
And you had no idea that these people were who they said, or who they ended up being when you pulled them over? You hadn't heard about this case at all prior to this?
No, ma'am. Good.
What brought you the most satisfaction out of this entire case?
Probably the children. You know, they were just awesome. You know, it was great to be around them, and it makes you, you know, you get so used to your daily tasks, and to actually bring in the children and kind of lighten you up a little bit. It was such a big incident. It brings a little joy to it, and so I think that was the biggest.
And just for informational purposes, they were booked into Canal County, is that correct?
Correct, they're looking.
And this was on Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday night, ma'am.
Saturday? And they were on the run for how long?
Since the 15th of January.
And if you need any, I'm sure you guys already have a background on the Louisiana case, but I have been clear to talk about that if you like.
The homicide is the only thing that I had a question on.
Yeah, actually, even the Louisiana news agencies didn't know about the homicide, outstanding homicide warrant, so.
For him,
That I don't know the specifics of the.
Well, we're gonna ask him a couple.
Oh, sure, absolutely. No
Oh,
problem.
you know what,
I'm
we,
assuming that
you want
the
some-
warrants and
you want some of
everything
him?
else going on.
Give or your-
No,
okay, I'll
that he was not booked on.
no problem.